So, hey everyone, this is Edwin Beckham here at the Church of the Good Shepherd Episcopal in Covington, Georgia, in the United States of America, here in the hot and humid southeast of the U.S. Heather, you want to introduce yourself?
I am Heather Dobbs. My family and I are members of Church of the Good Shepherd. Yeah, that's me.
Well, I'm going to share my screen. I put together a few slides, but I probably got carried away on sort of history and some data kinds of things, and we'll try to get through the slides and then switch to our photo gallery, our Flickr photo gallery, to give you a better idea of the life of this place we call Good Shepherd. Let's see. Safari, that's what I want. There's the pictures. Here are the slides. So Heather, I know you've collected some things. So just I want you to jump in whenever.
Okay.
All right. So there we are. Our little logo on the bottom left there that we got when I came here in 2013 as the first priest in charge, and then later rector of Good Shepherd, and we didn't really have a logo, so I helped us pushed ahead an effort to get us a logo in those first few years, and that Celtic cross you see there is inspired by the same. It is the design of the very cross that is in our burial garden here on the grounds where we inter cremated remains right next to the church. Hopefully we'll get a picture of that lovely garden and that cross over there. And of course on the bottom right, for those who may not know, that is the shield of the Episcopal Church here in the United States and a number of other countries, right? How do I go forward? Please help me. I'm not used to using this particular slideshow. Huh. Oh, I just clicked. There we go. The Georgia, of course, the state of Georgia here in the U.S., in the American South, was originally the colony of Georgia, a colony of the British Empire. I'm sure Lee learned all about it in school when he was young. 1732 is when the charter for the colony of Georgia was created there in England, and General James Oglethorpe was given charge of making something happen down here below South Carolina, really sort of partly as a buffer between the older colonies of South Carolina and North Carolina to the north, and the Spanish down in Florida. And so there's Oglethorpe, his statue in Savannah, Georgia. And he brought a priest with him when he landed in 1733. He had an Anglican priest with him. It wasn't too long before the Wesleys showed up. Their first set foot in the American colonies there probably on St. Simon's Island, where everybody goes for vacation now, there in Georgia. I had some other notes, and let's make sure that get them all. Yeah, Oglethorpe built Fort Frederica there on St. Simon's Island. Let me read you this quote from John Wesley. John Wesley wrote at one time, "The first rise of Methodism was in 1729. Methodism, remember, when 4 of us met together at Oxford. The second was at Savannah, Georgia, in 1736, when 20 or 30 persons met at my house." He was priest of Christ Church, Savannah, the first or second church, Anglican church in Georgia. And of course, that gives you a sense that Anglicanism had kind of a bumpy start from the very beginning, not only in the colonies as a whole, but certainly in Georgia, because the primary priests charged with looking out over the church in the colony turned out to be initially the Wesleys, who were already on their way towards Methodism. Let's see. I grabbed a few more stats. Of course, the other evangelical denominations, the Baptists especially, in addition to the Methodists, grew in the southern colonies much faster than the Anglican Church. The Diocese of Georgia, the Episcopal Diocese of Georgia was founded in 1823 with only 3 parishes: Savannah, St. Simon's Island, and Augusta on the Savannah River, with no bishop. And finally, a bishop was ordained for the Diocese of Georgia, which included the whole state then, in 1840. And there were 6 parishes at the time. Let's jump back in history briefly. Come on. Sorry, you guys. Turns out I don't know how to work this particular version of PowerPoint. George Whitefield actually probably spent more time in Georgia than the Wesleys. Also a part of the Second Great Awakening there, and of course famous for his evangelical preaching, and moved up and down the East Coast in the mid 1700s there, but did spend a good bit of time in Georgia and founded an orphanage actually that survives to this day there on the coast of Georgia. Can you see that quote from George Whitefield? I thought that was a good one. I was honored with having I was honored with having a few stones, dirt, rotten eggs, and pieces of dead cats thrown at me while preaching. Those were the days, right there in the colonies. Heather, is there history here that I'm missing that you want to point out?
No, this is good. I was just going to say, as far as Savannah is concerned, that is where I was raised.
Yeah.
And came up in St. Matthew's Episcopal Church there, which was one of the first Black Episcopal churches, I believe, in the state. And so there is a pretty rich history, there as well. But it did take, as Father Edwin said, quite a bit of time to take hold. And we actually, my mom's side of the family, being Episcopalians, was really a break away from the rest of my family, who were largely Baptist and Pentecostal. So, but to this day, most of us are still in the Episcopal Church in some way, shape, or form. I still have a pretty big family stronghold at St. Matthew's, and then my nuclear family and I are at Church of the Good Shepherd, and then I have family here in the Atlanta area as well that is at another church in the Atlanta Diocese too. So.
Yeah. And of course, it's good to be reminded at this point that, from the beginning, people of all sorts of backgrounds, including those enslaved in Georgia, would have been a part of the Anglican churches there on the coast, and it wasn't until much later, sort of Civil War and after, that these churches started kind of splitting apart over race and discrimination, and the Episcopal, in general, the Episcopal Church, and certainly in the South, ended up creating and building up parishes that became specifically African American parishes in the post-Civil War era, largely after many of these people were simply kind of kicked out or made to feel completely unwelcome in the Episcopal churches where they had been for a number of years. So that tradition survives very strongly to this day, and Georgia has some of the, I would say, Heather, would you say that Georgia has probably some of the strongest African American, traditionally African American parishes in the country?
Yes.
When you think about St. Paul's Atlanta and St. Matthew's Savannah and this kind of thing. Let's see. Bethesda was the orphanage that George Whitefield founded, 1738 or 1740, outside of Savannah there. All
and
right.
It's still the Bethesda home for boys now.
There you go, Bethesda. Thank you. I'd forgotten that. I just kind of ran across it with a friend in high school when I was driving down through there, and I thought, what is that? Oh, yeah. I learned about it later. Just a little bit about the Episcopal Church in Georgia. It's finally some growth in the end of the 19th century, from 88 missions to 108 in the, what about it, 15-year span there. Whoops, sorry. Again, I apologize for not knowing how to navigate this thing. I found that statistic interesting. 0.4% of Georgians in 1900 were, out of 2.2 million, were Episcopalians. So that then and now, we're really a tiny percentage of the religious population in the state. The Diocese of Atlanta, our diocese, was created in 1907, and as in so many places here, as the population of the United States grew, many dioceses were whole states, certainly in the South, and they were split up into multiple dioceses. So Atlanta got the northern half of the state, along the fall line, we call it, and the so-called old diocese remains the Diocese of Georgia, just to create confusion. So you tell somebody you're in the Diocese of Georgia, and they think of the whole state. Or you tell them you're in the Diocese of Atlanta, and they think of only the city of Atlanta, and not the whole northern part of Georgia. So we're always explaining that. There's, I'll get some pictures in here. The bishop has gotten us to basically call the Diocese of Atlanta for that very reason, to talk about the Episcopal Church in Middle and North Georgia. And there you see Bishop Rob Wright, my friend from 2003, when I was sent to his parish as an aspirant for Holy Orders to do an internship there. He was elected in 2012 as Bishop of Atlanta. I think, did I give the number? I think he's maybe the 10th or 11th Bishop of Atlanta. And has there's so much more we could say about Bishop Wright and the directions he's taken the diocese in. Maybe one way to describe him is as a public theologian. He sees himself as a public theologian. He has a popular podcast now. He speaks all over the country, and this kind of thing is in demand in the Episcopal Church and beyond. A few stats about our diocese there. That's in quotes, the title there in quotes, because it's kind of the way he talks. 45,000 young people, adults, and feisty seniors there in Middle and North Georgia. If you look over at the map, you see the location of our parishes and other worshiping communities. Atlanta there, near the center of the northern half of the state, and we go all the way down to here to Columbus, and then the fall line, that geographical feature, it just goes right along here. Whoops, there I go, clicking again, messing this up. Augusta up here is in the Diocese of Georgia, so there's a imaginary line through here. I grabbed some statistics about our average Sunday attendance pre-COVID, 12 to 13,000 across all these 110 or so worshiping communities, the bishop would say. We have a designated cathedral, St. Philip, there in the metro Atlanta. And I listed some of the ministries that the diocese is involved in. We have an increasing number of Spanish-speaking priests, missioners, and congregations these days. Church of the Common Ground is an outdoor church for people experiencing homelessness in downtown Atlanta. Currently run by a priest who is also a state senator here in Georgia. Emmaus House and Chapel was begun as a mission, an urban mission in a very poor, largely African-American neighborhood in Atlanta in the 60s, and continues on as a vital mission of the diocese to the city of Atlanta and the neighborhoods of Atlanta, and on from there. What am I missing, Heather? Any thoughts about the diocese before we?
The Absalom Center.
Ah, yes. Haha. Keep talking.
Uh,
There we go.
okay. So the Absalom Jones Episcopal Center for Racial Healing is very big here as well, and doing a lot of various things, workshops, different meetings, different like book talks and tours and discussions and things like that to really allow people to come together and talk about the burden that racism is here and talk about what we can do to one, make sure we're having honest conversations about it, but also to be actively dismantling it and making sure that people are working towards reconciliation and not division, which of course is you see a lot in our politics here, and a lot of people unfortunately using or trying to use to their advantage to gain inroads with certain communities. But the Absalom Center is really good about putting out newsletters and doing some really good educational series and materials to fight racism.
Yes, thank you, Heather. And this center developed from the diocesan commission on blessed the beloved community and racial healing that went back many years, of course. And so just in the last Heather, 3-4 years, uh, money was allocated. A very dynamic retired professor, Catherine Meeks, was hired to build up this new center there in downtown Atlanta as a ministry, not just to our diocese and to the state, but to the whole church and the country. And it's really taken off in the way that Heather described. Okay. Good Shepherd, not to forget. There we are in little Covington, Georgia. The pink line there is Interstate 20, a main interstate highway heading east out of from Atlanta into South Carolina. This is all Atlanta metro area over here. You see the ring road is called we call it the perimeter. Every town uses every city has a different name for their ring road. So the big city over here, Covington, in Newton County, was for a long time, 150 years almost, a very rural farming community with a county seat, and with some light manufacturing into the 20th century, and has increasingly become an exurb, just beyond the suburbs of Atlanta, with a lot of people working, driving, or commuting to work in Atlanta or very close to Atlanta, back to the west. But still has a small town feel in some ways. Good Shepherd was founded there in Covington in 1950. Just celebrated our 70th anniversary in 2020. Does that sound very old, Lee? The building came along very quickly. The first building in 1951, and the parish is to this day proud that it was never in a mission status. That is, never supported financially by the diocese and the bishop, but rather self-supporting from the beginning. Good Shepherd has remained pretty small over the years. I put the clergy tenures in there. They were 2 and 3 and 4 years up until the 80s, and they started to lengthen, thankfully, in the 80s. And the 2 longest being mine, and then the longest being in the 2000s, my predecessor. Under my predecessor Tim's tenure, the parish decided to build a whole new campus, all of 10 or 12 blocks away from the original, and you'll see some pictures in a bit. 2008, the new campus opened. They didn't have any room to grow, they thought, where they were, and so built this beautiful new campus. Built 2 buildings and renovated a third that was already here, an old cottage for the office. Let me tell you what, let's switch to pictures for a second here. This is the campus when it was brand new. Our beautiful Carpenter Gothic church there, with a real bell tower, Lee, just like in Mother England. One bell, only one, but it's a nice one. It's actually needing some repair right now, the mechanism. There's our Celtic cross, a beautiful Celtic cross in the garden. There's looking back the other way at the burial garden. Plaque on the wall here with nameplates for all those who have been interred there. Let's see what else we got. There's the altar. One of two windows here. This crucifixion, circular crucifixion window, came out of the old church. The two stained glass windows were brought over, deconstructed and reconstructed here in the new space. Narthex. It's a lovely shot from the choir loft in the back, down on our beautiful neo-Gothic, Carpenter Gothic space. One of the transepts needs to be a chapel. Pulpit over here, lectern over here. Both of them need lighting to this day. They were never lit with spotlights. It's a nice close-up of the scripture there is from the King James, and if I be lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men unto me. Looking back at the choir loft and that beautiful ceiling with the alpha, see the alpha and omega joist, ceiling joist there. Some fall color. Bookstore. Okay. Let's go back to our slides. As I said, Covington is this small county seat of a fairly low population rural community for many years, a community of cotton farming, cattle farming, some light manufacturing, and then since the 1990s, more and more an exurb of Atlanta. We were the only parish in multiple surrounding counties for a time. And so people were coming here, driving here from those counties. In the 60s and 70s, Good Shepherd helped to plant parishes in 4 of those surrounding counties. And so we lost people to those new parishes. And then, but we still have a few folks who come from those other counties who may have spent time in those other parishes and decided maybe they'd better be here. There's always some of that, right? Parish began to grow a bit in the late 90s, I meant to write, and early 2000s, and then with maybe peak attendance, we think around 150 in 2010. And then you see that is average Sunday attendance of 150. That was already declining a little bit as I got here, and we're now showing about 325 people on the rolls, 85 people pre-COVID, February 2020, and around 42 last fall, and we've been very delighted to see that creeping up, 48 to 50 people on a Sunday, this growing into this year. Mission ministry in recent years. This was the last thing I was able to write before we started. I did it really fast. Heather will think of other things, and we'll see other things in some photos. As you can imagine, the Episcopal Church women are a powerful force here at Good Shepherd over the years and make a lot of things happen. Not just a very intentional ministry they have had of feeding people who are home from the hospital or ill or this kind of thing, but things like making sure some outreach happens, like the back to school backpack and supplies collection that we do every summer. That's an ECW project. We have a parish outreach committee that was reformed in about 2015 or so, and has done a lot of great work. They haven't really come back from COVID, and that's something that we are trying to work on. And to us, outreach means getting out and trying to serve the community. You see that includes things like food collections every Sunday, People bring food to drop in the red wagon in the narthex, and then we roll it up the aisle at the presentation of the gifts and oblations, and it's blessed there, left there to be blessed at the Eucharist. Sack lunch Saturday, 11 years, I think, until it was stopped by COVID, 11 or 12 years of making close to 300 sack lunches one Saturday a month and handing those out literally to anybody who on the side of the road who would like one. And we had a couple of locations such as public housing here, which Lee, you would call a housing estate, where lunches were handed out. The coordinator of this ministry is no longer here with us, a Good Shepherd, and so between COVID and that, there's been a bit of a stall in deciding, okay, what's the next iteration, the next thing for Sack Lunch Saturday. Collecting Christmas gifts for children at Christmas. The Angel Tree Christmas gifts is a long-standing tradition here. We have done some lunch, made provision for giving out lunches in the summer when the kids cannot get lunches at school, kids who qualify for free lunch, and we've done that for 2 or 3 summers, just before COVID. I remembered a really great thing we did around 2018 of doing a roadside cleanup and a community lunch with a mosque, the folks from a mosque. The mosque is actually over in Atlanta, slightly over an hour away from here, but they had bought property out in our county in 2016. There was a bit of a dust up at the time. A lot of prejudice reared its ugly head. People trying to prevent this completely legitimate property purchase from going forward. People talking about terrorists, Muslim terrorists being invited into our county and setting up shop in our county, and some pretty awful stuff. And I was invited by some folks in the county, a handful of clergy, but a lot of other folks too, to make friends with these folks from the mosque, and we had some good meals and conversation time together among leaders, and then did this community lunch there, out at their property, as a way of building up and healing the hurts of August 2016. In the spring of 2021, we got together and decided we would serve meals and snacks to hospital staff workers, and there, as COVID was surging again, coming out of the winter of 21, and I think for 6 or 8 weeks, a few of our folks put that together, and we took care of the pharmacy staff at the hospital. Heather, I'm doing all the talking, and I'm not stopping enough to let you chime in. What are you thinking about while I go to pictures?
Just that this was what inspired me to join, coming from a church in Savannah that's very active in the community, and watching Church of the Good Shepherd kind of from afar at first, because it was difficult for me, when I moved here, kind of thinking of establishing another church as my home. And for a little while, I went to Texas. I was in Texas for 4 years, but other than that, I am, born and raised in Georgia. And in Texas, I did not seek a church home at all, just out of some different fears. But moving back to the Atlanta area, I watched Good Shepherd kind of for a year before I finally reached out to, become a member and join, and seeing like the ministry and the outreach, as well as like the reach with the newsletter and the different initiatives that Good Shepherd was taking, was what really led my family and I to join and really feel welcome as part of the community. So I think you covered most of what's done, particularly the, things with the back to school collection and things like that. But yeah, that's what really, again, led us to really want to be a part of Good Shepherd.
Thank you, Heather. I'm thinking also about that. Was it Ash Wednesday when you were here with your kids?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the first time I had tried that family-oriented Ash Wednesday service.
Yeah, and that worked really well. My kids are now almost 8. and 5. And but they, had a lot of questions, after that, and that really, spoke to them. And I enjoyed being able to bring them to an actual state service that was, centered on them. COVID definitely did kind of hit, I think, not just as a church, but definitely us personally as well, because my husband is a frontline worker. He's a nurse. And so we were worried not only about getting COVID from others, especially with having such small children, but also him bringing it to others as well. And that's really kept us out and away from things for so long. And we're just now starting to resurface and wanting to get back into the community and getting to get the kids back to school. But it's definitely nice to know that, when we return, that there are things that are geared for the youth there. Both as a mom and a former teacher, that's something that's super important to me that I was really proud the Good Shepherd does.
Amen. Thank you. I'll show you a few of these photos. This was Good Shepherd Sunday, that fourth Sunday of Easter tide in 2017. This was actually the last time that Bishop Wright made a visitation here, and you get a little bit of a sense of what we look like as a congregation, what our liturgy looks like. This gentleman who was baptized and of course confirmed that day ended up senior warden within about 3 years. Be careful about being baptized. Bishop. There we are. Need to get, one of my hopes was to get a semi-permanent font installed instead of this small little portable one, but that's still a work in progress. Need a font that will hold a lot more water, right? Maximize the symbol. All right, let's see what else we got here. The way we celebrate the way we try to celebrate baptism in my time was kind of moving to where the family of the baptized were expected to sort of put on a party, to where I thought it was the parish that should put on a party for the newly baptized. And I say a party, I mean a little reception afterwards, right?
And that was done for us and my family, which does include folks of the LGBTQ community, still talk about our children's baptism and how welcome they felt.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's so great to hear, Heather. It warms my heart. Here's our altar party getting ready to walk in. Most of our acolytes are this size now. We had all these ladies were close in age as in high school, and all graduated within 2-3 years of each other without a lot of people right behind them. So most of our acolytes now are between 2nd and 7th grade. The ones we do have that came back to church. So be thinking about that, Heather. It's soon it's time.
Cam would be all over that.
I believe it. What else can we show you? Let's see. I'm looking for some ministry stuff out there. Here are ladies taking the lunches to the hospital pharmacy staff in the spring of 21. And the thank yous from the staff there. Bags of snacks. Hey, and that's the vicarage. It's the backyard of this is the COVID, by the way, my wife's COVID lockdown project to, maintain your sanity. She built, see the Celtic cross design here, that she did all this. I was sort of the brawn behind it, behind some of the things, but she designed and created all this patio space. maybe one more set of things, and we'll. Where was Luis? I remember seeing. Here we go. 2016. There's Father Luis and his partner Nelson visiting us here. Our seminarian, I guess, was Kenya back for that 13, 14? She would have been probably newly ordained at that point, or about to be ordained a priest. Kenya was our seminarian for my first 3 years here while a student, and at Candler School of Theology, and then we ended up being her sponsoring parish for ordination. So a big party that day to welcome Father Luis and Nelson and celebrate Kenya. Excellent singing, of course, from the clergy. Here is an icon of Christ the Good Shepherd that Father Luis gave to us, that he wrote and gave to us as a gift. It still sits here in the office, prominently displayed. Okay, so I won't. That's a lot to take in. We've been going nonstop. I will stop there. Almost stop. You see in this front picture here is Ruth Healy. She was our assisting priest, part-time assisting priest when I arrived, and in 2013, and stayed through summer of 2019, when she retired for the third time in her life, I think, at age 89 or 90. Still driving herself out here from Atlanta at the time. Ruth is still doing well. She's given up her car. She has a safe place to live in assisted living. And she was a blessing to Good Shepherd for, I think, how many years? 10, we're right at 10 years. Okay, questions, comments, dissertations for us?
Thank you so much, Edwin, for the presentation and the pictures. It just gives such a great idea of your beautiful place. So usually we stop the recording, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, and then we can share that part of the video with other folks.